Hey guys, welcome back for another Epic on a Budget deck list. Today we're going to be talking about a cycling combo. This deck is built around the cycling ability, which lets you pay some cost, and or not. That's foreshadowing. And then discard a card to draw a card. Okay, and uh, basically our goal is to cycle almost our entire deck in a single turn and win the game by doing so. This, as part of our Epic on a Budget deck list series, this does cost $20 or less. That's using TCG player prices. So when you click the link in the description below, just change it to TCG player right there, and you should see something around that. Okay, well, let's jump into it. Basically, we are building around Fluctuator, and that is a 2-mana artifact. And it says cycling abilities to activate cost up to 2 less to activate. So that means they can be free as long as they cost 2 generic mana or less, which most of our deck has cycling for 2 generic mana or less. And then to actually win the game by cycling cards, we have Drannith Stinger, which is a 2/2 for 1 red, and it says whenever you cycle another card, Drannith Stinger deals 1 damage to each opponent, and it has cycling itself for a single mana, very conveniently. Okay, and in this deck, basically an equivalent ability on Magnkin Artillerist. It does cost 2 and a red, and it is a 1/4. But it says whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. We aren't going to be discarding a bunch of cards at a time. We're just going to be discarding them one at a time. So it basically functions the exact same way as Drannith Stinger. Okay. Oh, and the only way we're going to be discarding cards is, by cycling them. Okay, it also has cycling, though this is the one card in our deck that has cycling, but actually will still cost something, even with Fluctuator out, because it does cost 1 and a red to cycle it. So with Fluctuator out, it costs a single red. So you pay that cost, discard the card, and draw a card. And when you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. That's cool. So basically, you just get Fluctuator out, and then at least one of Drannith Stinger or Magnkin Artillerist, and then cycle your entire deck and win. Fairly straightforward, honestly. The rest of the stuff is basically just supporting that. So we will take a look at that. I just want to show you this, though. If you go to categories, basically these are all the cards that have cycling, 53 of them in the deck. We do have a few creatures that can get kind of big whenever you cycle cards. We have ways to gain life whenever you cycle. We have a few different removal options. And we have a bunch of lands or ways to find lands. Okay, and all that is basically just to support our main game plan of that combo, while still providing good backup options for whenever that combo doesn't quite work out quite as quickly or as smoothly as we would like it to. All right, so we'll just start at the top here. Drannith Healer costs 1 and a white for 2/2, and whenever you cycle another card, you gain 1 life, and it has cycling for a single mana. That is, convenient. Good way to survive a little bit longer while you're digging for your combo pieces is just gain life. Okay. Drannith Stinger, we've already gone over that. Eagles of the North. Eagles of the North is a very, very important card in this deck, along with its buddy Oliphant. They serve rather similar purposes in this deck. They both cost 5 and something. This one is 5 and a white. And it's a 3/3 with flying, and when it enters, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn, and we will never cast it or let it enter the battlefield, basically. Getting to 6 mana just really is probably not going to happen in this deck very often. Okay, we are using it for its plain cycling ability. Oliphant has a mountain cycling ability that functions very similarly. Okay, so Eagles of the North, with the plain cycling, you pay 1 or none if you have Fluctuator out, and then you discard the card, and you get to search your library for a plains card. reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Very importantly, it says a plains card, not a basic plains card. Okay, so that means you can search for anything that has the type plains. So we've got irrigated farmland that is a plains, and we've got scattered groves that is a plains, and both of these have cycling for 2, which means that when you start cycling, you can just use Eagles of the North, cycle it for free to find scattered groves or irrigated farmland, doesn't really matter which, and then cycle that to draw a card. Okay, that's pretty nice. We do also have a basic plains for when you just really need a basic plains. We only have 2 lands in the entire deck that can come into play untapped. One of them is this plains. Sacred Peaks, they just still haven't printed a Mountain Plains with cycling for 2 mana. So we have a Mountain Plains that enters tapped and doesn't have cycling, which is, a little too bad, but it works. Gets the job done. So we'll take it. All right. You do that whenever you actually need to play a land and you don't need the mana right then. Just grab Sacred Peaks. It'll be great. And then Oliphant does the same thing except for mountains. And we have Sheltered Thicket or Canyon Slough or Sloof or Slough or however you're supposed to pronounce that. And it's a swamp mountain. Basically, we only care about the mountain part and the cycling too. Okay. And then we have Flourishing Fox and Marauding Mako that, again, essentially do the same thing. So Flourishing Fox costs a white mana, it's a 1/1, and whenever you cycle another card, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. It has cycling 1. Marauding Mako, it costs a red, and it starts out as a 1/1. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature, and it has cycling for 2, which means that when in doubt, if you are going to play one of them, play Marauding Mako first, because you'd rather have to pay the cycling cost of Flourishing Fox than Marauding Mako. But that's basically the only difference between the 2 of them. Okay, that and whichever color of mana you have available. By the way, Feeded Pools is just here as essentially a land that taps for colorless, since we don't need blue or black in this deck, but we needed another land with cycling. That's basically it. Okay. All right. Then we do have a few removal options just to spice things up a little bit. Help us out in a pinch. We've got Gallant Strike for 1 and a white. Instant destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. That is really nice because we don't actually have super awesome ways of dealing with a creature with high toughness, unless we combo off, in which case it doesn't matter, except for this card. So that's nice. And it has cycling 2. Forsake the Worldly, cost 2 and a white, instant exile target artifact or enchantment. Okay, and it has cycling for 2. And then our last one is Go for Blood, which costs 1 and a red. And it's a sorcery. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Okay, now you might have noticed that most of our creatures that we will actually be playing are fairly small when they start. However, Flourishing Fox and Marauding Mako can get fairly large fairly quickly, even if you aren't comboing off with Fluctuator. Because just if you're trying to dig for pieces, you're going to be cycling, and these things are going to be growing. So Go for Blood can actually do some work. Other than that, though, it just cycles for a single mana, which is pretty nice. Okay, and that's basically the whole deck. So let's jump into it. Now, here's the playtester. When we mulligan, when we're deciding whether to mulligan or not, we really, really want to find a Fluctuator. We don't actually have a good way to search for Fluctuator. We'd have to just dig for it via cycling, which can get a little expensive, especially if it's several cards down. Okay, so we don't really want to do that. And the cool thing, though, is that as soon as we find Fluctuator, perfect, we can basically keep any other hand. Because we can always dig using Fluctuator to reduce the cycling costs. We can just dig for anything else we need. All right, so we're going to keep this. And we have Sacred Peaks, so we're going to start with that because it does not have cycling, so we might as well play it out. All right, so turn 2. Now, this is kind of up to you, whether or not you want to play something like Marauding Mako, because we're going to be cycling to find the Drana Stinger or Magmakin Artillerist. So it can be nice to get some value out of those cards that we're cycling. However, you'll just have one fewer card to cycle after you find the combo. It's kind of a balance you decide based on the decks you're playing against. For example, if I was playing against an aggressive deck, I would 100% cast Marauding Mako right now. Okay, and hope they didn't have a removal spell for it just yet. All right. Okay, so we still have not found our Drana Stinger and Magmakin Artillerist. So we'll just play a Fluctuator. And now, normally, you actually want to cycle Oliphants and Eagles of the North as soon as you see them, so that you don't end up with them in your hand and you've already cycled through all the ones they can find, all the lands of cycling that you can find. However, in this case, I want to keep them around if I can, to save them for when I have a Drana Stinger or Magmakin Artillerist out. So I'll just be cycling other stuff first. Okay. So we'll cycle this. Okay, and this is just keeping track right now of how many things we've cycled since our graveyard is empty when we started. Oh, perfect. We have Drana Stinger. All right, so we cycled 4 cards. So we'll just put 4 plus and counters on this. Now we have a 5/5, which can block a decent number of things. All right, and if we needed to, we could use one of these to get a land to play. If we'd found a Magmakin Artillerist that costs 3, we found Drana Stinger, so that's perfect. We don't need to do that. All right, so then we'll just go next turn. We will play Drana Stinger. All right, and now we just cycle until we've cycled 20 cards. That's basically it. All right, so now we're going to start with Oliphants. So 1, search the library for, perfect, that. We will play this. 2, search for, oh, perfect. See, if we'd cycled something else, we would have drawn this and we'd have 1 fewer to find. Now, there are 8 cards with lands of cycling for each of these land cyclers. So it doesn't come up too often that you don't have something to find, but it can, especially if you don't prioritize doing them first. Okay, perfect. So I will, that hand, perfect. So I've done 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, and as you can see, we could keep going with Eagles of the North and go for blood if our opponent had gained any life or anything like that. But as it is, we now have a 25-25 and our opponent has lost 20 life. And it's turn 4. So that's pretty cool, I would say. That's a success, and it does show you that you don't really need Drana Stinger or Magmakin Artillerist in your opening hand. Obviously, the dream is to have Fluctuator and one of those, as well as a couple lands. But you really only need Fluctuator and 2 lands to keep it. 1 land would work too, as long as it's an actual land. But remember that your land cyclers count as lands as long as you have an actual land to pay the cost with. So that's kind of the mulliganing priority there. Remember also that you can play a mountain if you run into it, and then cycle a Mannequin Artillerist. That's why I didn't play a land. Like I got planes, but planes would be useless in this case. So I was waiting. If I ran into a mountain, I could have just played it, and then I could have cycled a Mannequin Artillerist. That we didn't need it really this time, but that can come up. All right, so let's call it good. And that's basically how this deck works. It is fairly consistent, getting through your entire deck as long as you have at least a few cycling cards to start with. There are, like I said, only 7 cards in the entire deck that don't have cycling. So even if you do somehow run into, no cards with cycling in your hand while you're trying to combo off, you can often just wait till the next turn and start again, because odds are really high that whatever you draw will have cycling. So it's very consistent. Hope you like it, and if you do build it, please let me know how it goes, and definitely subscribe if you like this video so you can see the other videos that are coming out soon. Anyways, until then, have a good one. Ciao.